Hey, what's up everyone? Jay's 2 Cents here, and I'm gonna show you my new favorite piece of free software. We've kind of done these series in the past about like the best free software you can have on your system, clickbait title here, but this is one that I think might actually be useful for most people. And it's absolutely free. So we're gonna talk about it today, and I'm talking about Libre Hardware Monitor, now replacing Hardware Monitor as my all-time favorite monitoring software. I'm gonna show you guys how to install it, set it up, and show you what you can do with it. It's pretty freaking cool. So Libre Hardware Monitor is actually a continued open source project from one that stopped in the past, which was Open Hardware Monitor, which is essentially just an open version of Hardware Monitor. So yeah, anyway, so CPOID's Hardware Monitor is something I always used in the past. My biggest issue with Hardware Monitor itself, or HW Monitor, is the fact that it doesn't do like active logging. I mean, I guess there is the paid version, which can do some sense of logging, but because of our charts and stuff when we're doing testing with products and we want to see what our like frequencies over time or temp over time, or just start a log, stop a log, and get all the data of everything happening with every sensor in the system in the meantime, Hardware Monitor wasn't very good at that, even behind the paywall. So I found some posts talking about Open Hardware Monitor, which even looks nearly identical to this, that sort of stopped support a while ago. So like modern CPUs and stuff, it doesn't read all this temps, it doesn't read the temp sensors or anything, it just shows CPU load, which is kind of like Windows kind of telling it what the load is, to be honest. Then we found Libre Hardware Monitor. So let's talk about how to get it. I'm gonna install it for you right now on camera, and I'm gonna show you what cool stuff it can do. This is a GitHub, by the way, so I might put off some people, but anyway, it is a GitHub. So we're gonna type Libre, L-I-B-R-E, not to be confused with Luce Libre, the wrestler, or Nacho Libre, the movie. Anyway, so if you type Libre Monitor, you're gonna get Monitor for Diabetes. That's not it. Go ahead and make your jokes. Okay, I've heard them all. Anyway, so we want Libre Hardware Monitor, and that comes up right away. So that'll bring up the GitHub repository. We click down here, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come over here to the right-hand side where it shows releases. It'll be the latest release right here. So by the time you're watching this video, it might be 0.9.4 or something like that. Anyway, this is a 7-month-old release. Hopefully they'll come up with something new. Click on latest right here, scroll down to the bottom, and then you'll see at the very bottom under assets, we want right here, the Libre Hardware Monitor. Now, if you're a developer yourself and you kind of want to play around with this sort of stuff, they give you the source code as well. That's what's awesome about open source software, is it's basically saying, here's the source, do with it what you want. Nobody has rights to it, nobody's making money on it, so everyone's sharing it and saying, how can you make it better? And then this is how stuff gets better. So if you are a developer, they have the source code down here both as zip files and tar.gz files. So those are available to you. Anyway, the .zip is what we want. It's gonna download, depending on your security settings, it may have you verify a couple times that you trust it. So we can just right click, extract all. There's our folder right there. So I'm gonna take this folder, not the zipped one, but the unzipped one. I'm just gonna put it on my desktop for now. So when we open this up, we're gonna find down here our application file. So it is this one right here, the Libre Hardware Monitor application. We can also highlight it, right click it, show more options, send to desktop. So it creates a shortcut. So you don't have to keep opening the folder. I'm only showing you where the folder location is because that's where the log file is going to be saved. So if you're wondering like, where did those files go that I started and stopped the log for, that's there. I also have some suggestions for this software. So if you're a developer and you want to maybe help with the project, please take notes. So anyway, if you guys don't know, I used to work in product testing when it came to software, and I also was a part of our automated testing team. So I'm not a developer. I just was an idea guy. So I can't do this myself. So I need some of you guys that are much smarter than me, people that have as much brains in one nose hair of theirs than I have in my entire head to fix this kind of stuff. Anyway, if we open it up, you can see it looks strangely familiar to like Hardware Monitor, right? I wish these would automatically expand a little wider when you first open them. First and foremost, there's no dark mode. Somebody please make a dark mode which just inverts it so the background is gray or black and then the font is white or gray. That way it's easier on the eyes, okay? Especially when you're looking at an OLED screen. So if we go to File here, this is our hardware. This is where we can automatically tell it what stuff are we looking for. This is default. Obviously power supply and batteries would be for like a laptop or a handheld. I'm not a laptop or a handheld, so nothing shows up in these two areas. So I can just unclick those. Whoops. And that's another thing I wish. The menu should stay up when you click something. Every time I check something, it closes it, watch. That's incredibly annoying, but I think this is easy stuff that people can fix. I also don't care about my network. But let's say you wanted to like log your network. You could do that. And that's what I love is the fact that this software allows you to log anything. So uncheck network. I don't need storage devices either. So as you uncheck stuff, they disappear from this list right here, which is kind of nice. Otherwise, you have way more sensor data than you really need for this. Okay, if we go over here to view, you can reset the plot. Now what I mean by plot is you can create a plot area right here. We'll start to show the items that are checked right here. Now this is for visual logging that you could screenshot and use later. You can export all of this stuff into a CSV, put it into Excel or any other spreadsheet type editor, and then have a lot more flexibility over the way the data is represented and shown, but you have to have Excel spreadsheet knowledge on how to do that. I'll show you a simple way to do it, but I'm not gonna show you guys how to make the charts. That's a whole separate video. Anyway, so and I also wish it was showing the names of these temperatures right here. This is based on the motherboard though. So like other computers I've used it on, these temperatures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 actually tell you what they are. In this case, they're just mystery temps. I don't know what they are. But that is under the Gigabyte tab. So I know it's a motherboard sensor of some sort. It could be PCH temp, it could be chipset temp, all kinds of stuff. So, but if I were to click that, you can see that temp is now shown on the graph, right? So let's say we want to see our correlation of, let's say we want to monitor our voltage. And by the way, shift click does not select all of them. Developer request number 3. So we've asked for dark mode. I've asked for the menu to stay up when you're in there clicking stuff. Now I'm asking for a way to select more than one sensor at a time, because if I want to now monitor, let's say, voltages, I have to check all of these. And that's obviously if I only care about checking per core voltage, but with the latest Intel stuff, per core voltage is actually pretty important. So you can see the plot is now being filled in with stuff, right? Also too, I think it'd be neat for us to be able to, yeah, so you can do some, see auto scales on, value access enable zoom. So I wish I could adjust the scale, because right now it's only going 1.28 volts to 1.37 volts, and that scale will move as we do stuff. Like if it were to spike like 1.5, it would stretch out the plot area. So allow me to define the plot area. That'd be nice. Not a huge deal, but that would just be nice to see. So now I got to go through and uncheck all of these if I want to undo them. So this is when a shift click or even a control click to select more than one at a time that are not all next to each other would be a nice feature to have. Okay, moving down, you can see this, look at this, just shows us everything with our clock speeds. And I like that it's not just showing like the full clock speed. It's not just saying 5.5 gigahertz, it's 5.491.2 because our bus speed is currently 99.8 and not 100. So it shows you the actual value. Probably a little more granular than we really need, but it's just nice to see. Core temperatures are obviously also shown right here with CPU package at the bottom. This is the first piece of software I've personally looked at other than maybe Ada64, which again, the free version is very limited. The full version is very expensive. That shows us distance to TJ Maxx. So this actually shows us how far of a temperature we have before we thermal throttle. So you can see currently we're in the 30s and 20s, which means we have 70 degrees of headroom available to us. It's just nice to see how far it is. Now TJ Maxx stands for thermal junction max, which means where hard throttling will start. Did I say throttling? And then below that, we can see our CPU load, which is kind of nice to see. It's kind of just awesome to see the way the world thread, if you will, for the OS bounces around, different stuff happening here. It says generic memory. No, it's Crucial Pro. It's not generic. DDR5 Uber Edition, black, no RGB, because RGB sucks dog. There, so I renamed that sensor. It's just kind of neat that you can do that. So moving on, you can see GPU as well. So obviously we have our GPU, which is the other thing I think people would probably be very interested in monitoring here. We have our GPU package power. We have our GPU core clocks and memory clocks, and then our hotspot and core temperature as well. So even MSI Afterburner doesn't show hotspot. Hotspot's important too, because that's a hidden value that people don't tend to see, which is also very involved in the throttling and the P states of your core. So if your P states are up and then your hotspot hits a higher temp that you don't see because it's not shown, and you start seeing your clocks drop, and you're like, wait a minute, why are my clocks dropping? I'm only at like 70C on my GPU. Well, you look at your hotspot and it's at like 95C because your thermal paste is terrible. Then you can see those values and figure out what's happening, why your clocks are dropping because of that. In fact, we had a GPU that was sent to us a few years back where I noticed it would start high and then it would completely start to fall on its face. And I found that the hotspot was like 100C, but our core was at like 60. We had like a 40C delta. It was actually a bad applied water block installation where we didn't get full coverage on the water block, which meant some of the die was way hotter than the rest. And it was clocking our 30 series card all the way down to like 1600 megahertz. Looking at that going, everything seems fine. Come to find out hotspot was the indicator to say, hey, bad thermal paste application on the block. So monitoring this sort of stuff can be handy in many, many ways. Most of this stuff is not important to you, like GPU bus. GPU board power is kind of nice because you can see what the total board power is of your GPU. Like we don't really need to see what our direct 3D stuff that's happening here is. Throughput, that's an interesting one. I've never really seen this before and I'm not entirely sure how to decipher this. It might be nice to see, because you can see the PCIe receive and transmit speeds. So you could start to figure out like, am I bus bottlenecked? Am I somehow, so it might be fun to go into the motherboard, throw like a 4090 on there, drop us down to say like Gen 3 16X and see what the actual throughput is and then compare it to Gen 4 and Gen 5 and see where are we starting to see where we're actually causing a performance degradation because of the fact that the PCI bus speed is too slow. So we could finally actually see that in one piece of software. Those utilities exist independently, and this is keeping us from having to have multiple monitoring pieces of software up at a time to see what's happening. So having one piece of software that does everything is actually kind of nice, in my opinion. Okay, Jay, well, that's cool and all. I can monitor all of this, other than the fact that it's gonna be up and running. Like I can see it in real time. So let's go ahead and let's see what our core voltage is right there. And if we add things that have multiple values, so for instance, we have a core value, and now I wanna see what my core temp is gonna be. Let's come down here and add CPU package. Now you can see it splits the plot into two different plot areas. So it's not overlaying them, they have to split them because we have a temperature value and we have a voltage value. Unfortunately, as you can see, because it's auto accessing like this, it looks like we're all over the place because it's only a range of 35 to about 55C. So again, this is where I highly recommend being able to change our access here. Like I'm clicking auto scale, it's not even doing anything. So it'd be nice to be able to adjust our access on there so we have a little bit more usable data. Show hidden sensors is kind of nice too. So you can see the stuff that's here that you don't normally get to see. So you can also hide stuff if you want. For instance, let's just say I don't care about temperature 1 and 2 for whatever reason. I can right click and hide. You see now it's just gonna gray out. You can also right click and hide other stuff that I want. And as soon as I hide sensors, it disappears. Now, one thing that this does not do, which again, developer request number 5, if I hide the sensor, omit it from the log, if that's possible. If it's possible to say only log checked sensors, you're gonna see why when we look at the CSV at the end of the log, okay? It's the biggest complaint I have about the logging feature. Developer request number 6. To start logging, you simply click log sensors. The menu disappears. If you go back and look at it, you have a check mark. There it is right there. That's our only indicator that something is logging. It might be nice to have a little record symbol or something show up. Hotkey selections, we can't do hotkeys. And something to tell us your log has started. When you start the log, you'll notice if we look in the folder here, we get a CSV file right here. The file is always gonna start here and have the latest date. So if I started multiple files right now on this date, it would if it was a new date, it does a new file. So once you're done logging, it'll start this file down here. Where is it? Right there. So it's a CSV or a comma separated values file. Anyway, this is what you get when you open it. So if you have Excel, you're gonna get a whole bunch of crap. So this is every single one of those sensors here. Clearly this is a frequency file, like all the frequency of all the cores right there. Imagine doing this with like a 96 thread Threadripper. No, excuse me, 96 core Threadripper. Imagine that. Anyway, and then I didn't log for very long, so it only goes down to right here. So the longer that you're logging, each line is essentially whatever the polling rate is of the log. So if you come here to options and you go to logging interval, I'm set to 1 second. So if you want to do long-term tests, let's say you want to run something for like 2 days, you could have it check every 10 seconds, every 1 minute, 5, 10, 30, 1 hour, 2, 6 hours. So you can keep this from being a 1 million long line item, which it could be 1 million items long if you write it for several days, polling every second. So I just want to show you how to turn this quickly into a chart, which you can then format on your own. So first of all, column A is always going to be time. So the nice thing is the columns are always the same. They're always exactly the same. So if you know if you're testing the same CPU and GPU config, all the same hardware, nothing's changed, then I would know that like BH or whatever is going to be core package, CPU package or whatever, right? Anyway, the first thing we have to do is reformat this column A. I don't know why it's doing this. Maybe Excel users can tell me why it's showing all hashtags. It is a time value, as you can see right there. It's 7/26/2004 at 12:51. So I like to just turn this into something more simple. Format cells. It's a time. Let's just turn it into time. I don't need the date. So there it all is right there. So I could even have the seconds on there if I wanted. So let's do, once again, right click, format cells, and there it is with the seconds, boom. So you can see right there, it's pulling every 1 second. So if I want to, let's say, do the voltage, let's just say we know voltage 1 is what we want. Control, click on the column, and then come up here to insert. We're gonna come over here to insert a line or area chart, and then we're gonna just do a regular 2D line, and there's a very crude now you can see right here, the reason why this has got this whole funky verbiage going on right here is because it takes whatever the top value is of the chart and makes that the legend. So let's undo that, highlight all of column 1, delete, there. So now what's up here at the top is gonna actually be what our chart's gonna show. So now you can see it says CPU core voltage, which is what I renamed it to. And we can adjust the scale on this one. So I can right click, or click on our vertical axis, right click, format axis, and I can give it a range here. So it should always start at 0. All charts should start at 0, in my humble opinion. If you're trying to compare something, you wanna see where it starts from 0. Let's just say we wanna make it 2 volts. We should never, ever, ever see 2 volts. But there you go, you can see it adjusts everything. So this is why I like this. So now I've got, obviously we need our vertical axis, so that's gonna be our time. Our duration axis is time. And then we have these voltages selected. Go to insert once again, line, 2D line. There it is. So you can see our core voltage, and then obviously these voltages are very steady. So this is some sort of, I mean, you see it's all sitting at like 2 volts and whatnot. So it's probably VID or something like that. Voltage doesn't really fluctuate like an identification voltage. So it's really powerful in that you can use this tool to show you what stuff over time looks like. So that's where I really went hunting for a piece of software that allowed me to log what's happening in my system and then turn that log into some sort of data visualization for you guys. So that's enough about the Excel stuff. Going through, not a whole lot else to talk about here. So let's look at some of the other options. So we've got obviously start, minimize, run on Windows startup, temperature units. You never need Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit should never be used. Look, yeah, I live in the US. I speak Fahrenheit, I speak miles, I speak fractions of inches. However, when it comes to PC, I only speak standard units. I don't speak imperial when it comes to PC. So when you guys send me videos or pictures saying, is this temp look normal and your CPU's at 170 Fahrenheit? I'm like, I don't know. It looks hot. And then I convert it. I'm like, no, that's like 70 something C, you're fine. So I don't know. Use C, it's the universal temperature, at least for this. Okay, we can all agree on that, please. So you can set up remote web servers here if you want to do this and monitor this. You can have this information being displayed on a web server so that you can monitor it from somewhere else, which is kind of nice. So there you go, just a quick tutorial on how to use Libre Hardware Monitor. It's replacing Hardware Monitor or CPU ID's Hardware Monitor in all my systems for anything that's important for me to log what's happening over time. You've probably noticed in some of our videos coming out now that we're doing this more time graph that's drawn and shown how things do over time. It's way more important to see what a temperature graph looks like over time based on the workload than to see what's the max temperature it ever achieved. Because you can see in some of those graphs, we'll show one right here, there's these crazy peaks that will pop up, and that will give you very weird indicators of what the max temp might look like, but it's just some weird pole rate thing that gave it's hard to explain what those outliers are, but we care about what that median line is. So that gives us more useful data now in our reviews as we move forward. And you guys can start creating your own useful data, especially if you want to send reports to people to say, hey, here's what my CPU is doing over time. it's actually more important to see that information than saying, here's a screenshot of hardware monitor. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll put the link to the GitHub down below. Hopefully we don't crash it. That tends to happen when we do these types of videos. So if for some reason it's not working, give it time, come back in a few days, maybe it'll be back up. Usually GitHub can handle the kind of traffic that might come its way, but I can't guarantee that we won't necessarily break it. So I apologize, GitHub, if I accidentally DDoSed that particular host. All right, thanks for watching, guys. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.